Today's episode is all about light and how it's impacting our health. My guest is Daria Machold. She is actually my assistant coach in higher coaching, and she is super smart and super educated, and honestly, the best spoken person that I know on this topic. So I asked her to come on and educate you guys about how light, the different spectrums of light that happen throughout the day, how those are impacting our health, and how our artificial light environments are severely negatively impacting our health. And if you aren't educated about this, please listen to this whole episode. Find out. We're going to link up in the show notes an app that I talked about, another app that she talked about, and then also she has a free 7-day course for you on understanding these things. So you can check that out in the show notes as well. But I have just gotten to the point where I'm like, this is one of the biggest problems in human health, and we are severely underestimating it. So I hope you guys enjoy. Let's talk about light and how it is impacting our health with Daria Machold. Okay, so Daria, I had to have you on to talk about sunlight and how our bodies interact with all the different light spectrums. And I'm going to tee this off for the audience by just having you guys think for a second. I want you guys to imagine that it's nighttime. It's like black, totally dark. And you go into a gas station, and the gas station has all of that, like the horrible bright lights, and just think about how you feel in there. And then imagine any time of day, early morning, midday, sunset, dusk, nighttime. Think about how your body feels in any of those environments because of the lighting, right? And it's like on a very intuitive basis, we can feel the juxtaposition of that. We can feel when light spectrums are not going great with our bodies. And, before we started, I was like, we were talking about just what we're going to discuss. And you were like, yeah, we just need to remind people that the sun isn't toxic. So let's kick off this amazing discussion about light with that question in mind. Like, why do people not need to be afraid of the sun? And what do they need to know about how sunlight and the different light spectrums impact their health?
Yeah, well, I'm very excited to be here and talk about this topic. I'm very passionate about it. And why is sun not toxic? Well, let's see. How many studies do we need to run to understand if it's toxic or not? Like, there is one study that is uncorruptible. That's the longest that's been running for over 2 million years. That's called evolution. Evolution of the hominids, right? And we know from that study that is not flawed, that anybody can look up because they can see themselves in the mirror, why the sun is not toxic. Because people know about photosynthesis in the plants, but they don't know about photosynthesis in the humans, in the mammal, in
Right.
animals. Like I think sometimes about like how men know very well how cars work, but when it comes to knowing how our bodies work, we're not good at that.
Right.
As people, we don't come to like think about this stuff. We just rent our bodies to authorities and kind of don't
Right.
use critical thinking. But as Tara said, right, like when you get into the sun, immediately you feel good because nature has made you being addicted to the sun because you release endorphins when you're in the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Why do we have photoreceptors that accept all the different frequencies, including UV light, right? People are
Mm-hmm.
afraid of UV light, but it's important to say that how did we come to the conclusion that UV light is carcinogenic? Is we took mice that are nocturnal animals that have fur, we put them in a lab under artificial light without the red light that's always present in the sun, and we ran those experiments on a nocturnal animal whose photosynthetic circadian rhythms are completely different to ours. They are completely opposite. So how do we think we're basing our whole lifestyle recommendations by all these authorities on these kind of studies? And this is just ridiculous. I want people to understand that this doesn't make any sense. It's beyond ridiculous.
Mm. You,
So
you talked about photosynthesis in the human
yeah,
body. Can
yeah.
you elaborate on that?
So if we look at a leaf, it's green, right? Because it has chlorophyll in it. And we can think of chlorophyll in the plants as the equivalent of that in us is mitochondria. There are little organelles that are inside of our cells that also kind of spin, but we spin ATPase to produce ATP when we're in the sun. When we're in red light, in the red light frequencies of the sun, we're making ATP without any food present.
And ATP,
So,
just in case you're not aware, is cellular energy, our
yeah,
body energy system. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. Um, and we should talk also about ATP. It's pretty fascinating because it's connected to melanin. But what I was going to say about photosynthesis is that chloroplast that contains chlorophyll is like the melanin that we have contains this intrinsic property of converting sun energy into chemical energy, because when sunlight hits melanin, because we have melanin in the skin, but we also have it in the inside of us, and we can talk about that. So when those photons hit melanin, it dissociates the water that our mitochondria make into hydrogen, oxygen, and electrons. And these are the three elements that feed mitochondria to make ATP.
Imagine that. You know, I always like on a very basic level, which I think you're hitting on too. I'm like, if the sun was bad for us, why would the earth be set up this way? Right. Obviously, we don't want to burn ourselves. And we get biofeedback naturally of, hey, that was too much for you right now. Right. So
Yeah.
it's like very logical. Right. But in terms of the sun being bad, look around. Like, obviously, it was designed for us for a reason. And
Yeah.
okay, before we get deeper into all the melanin stuff, because I definitely want to, um, let's talk, you know, skin cancer and those types of fears. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, there's a very big study. It's pretty famous. From 2016 in Sweden, they took a whole cohort of 20,000 people, and they wanted to see how exactly sunlight causes cancer. And they found exactly the opposite, because they found that the more people expose themselves to sunlight, the less their mortality rate from skin cancer, melanoma and non-melanoma cancer was.
Mm.
So anybody can look it up. And yeah, we can go so many ways here, but um, it's just, ridiculous that we protect ourselves from the sun with our clothing and sunscreen and sunglasses, but then we go inside, we turn on artificial light that has nothing to do with the frequencies from the sun. It has very narrow bands of blue light. Blue light on its own is not like bad or good, because it's present in the sun. But when it's unopposed synthetic blue light that's man-made, and we expose it to ourselves during night, we're shining screen, we're shining blue light on our thyroid. It's blue light on the spectrum is very, like, it's right close to the UV light. So it's also high energy, short wavelengths, and they penetrate deeper, like pretty deep into the skin, into the body. So why is it normal to hide away from the sun, wear shades and hats and all of that stuff? And clothes is also a problem. I know it's kind of funny, but there is a reason why Homo sapiens don't have fur on them. Yeah, we could talk about that. It's really interesting also. But and then we go inside and shine that synthetic light, and we don't protect ourselves. Why do you think it makes sense?
Yeah. I
Which
mean, I'm
is
inside right now because it's early morning in Hawaii and it was dark when I was setting up, and I can feel it. I can feel the difference. And I think if we start paying more attention to that, like how we feel as a result of our light environment, a lot of this will come with common sense. And, you know, that's a super interesting study from Sweden. I'm definitely, maybe we can link that up in the show
yeah,
notes.
yeah.
But I also think that, a big part of the problem from oxidative stress from the sun is that we are so separate from it for so long. And then what do we do? The only time somebody goes and actually exposes these parts of their bodies that never see the sun, they go to the beach for 6 hours, right? And
Yeah,
then we get burning,
yeah,
and that
that's the
creates
problem.
obviously
Yeah,
oxidative stress.
because
And
it, yeah,
go
because if we don't expose ourselves to the morning frequencies when UV is not present at sunrise, we cannot prepare our skin. Our skin and our brain don't know, like, when did actually the day start? Because I didn't get the signal. I didn't get the memo. Come
Mhm.
on.
Mhm.
Uh, we're designed to be outside up to 12 hours, like you live at the equator. The day is 12 hours long. We're designed to be outside all day long. So imagine like like in the prehistoric times when people were in the cave, it was only like when they were sick, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's like we got our light backwards because we're spending 95% of the time indoors with this
Mhm.
alien light,
Mhm.
and we don't even think twice about it. But
And we're
uh,
like, what, like 100 years in to electricity? And when was the
yeah,
light bulb? Like 100 some years?
1873. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
150 years. We're only
yeah,
150 years
yeah.
in, and in human evolution, that's a very short amount of time. This is all very new to us, right? It's like plastic.
So it's
Plastic is
killing us.
super new, like,
Yeah,
right. And
yeah.
so a lot of these things, it's hard to distinguish, right? It's like, oh, well, you have this problem and you have that problem and you have that problem. I'm never going to think, well, it's because my body isn't able to make energy appropriately because I'm never in
Mm.
the natural environment that it was meant to be. But those of us who are nerdy about this know that that is absolutely the case. And I'm really, really inviting listeners to start noticing how you
Mm.
feel as a result of your light environment. Okay,
Yeah,
early morning sunlight. While we're kind of on this like anti-sunlight conversation, can you talk about sunglasses?
yeah. Well, what happens when you block sun frequencies from your eyes? It's important because our eyes have rotating retinal pigmentum epithelium, rotating cells at the back of our eyes that that are designed to feed that frequency into SCN, suprachiasmatic nucleus, in the brain. That is the master clock of your body. All the other cells in the body that have gene clocks in front of them, all of them have that circadian rhythm clocks, because all hormones are released on a clock. They're supposed to ebb and flow throughout the day and throughout the night, right? So they take clues on what time it is from your master clock in your brain, the SCN. And the SCN takes the time through the eyes from the sun. So when you block those frequencies, your brain doesn't know what's going on. And
Right.
it's like, I like to compare it to like post office or an airport. Like your brain is the tower that's traffic control tower, and if it doesn't have the time right, all the airplanes are coming in at different times and they're crashing. You
Hmm.
need to reset that. So you need to clue in your body at least several times a day, popping out. And it's funny, like when people used to smoke when it was cool, people would go
Yeah.
out every hour for 5 minutes and it was okay because of the addiction. Well, how about like if people are worried about like, well, I work in an office, what do I do? How about saying like you're addicted to the sun? Like, uh, it's like it's our birthright, right?
Yeah.
And as Americans know, it's people in the US know, like you have to fight for freedom. It's not a given, unfortunately. And many
Yeah.
people will be pissed, like listening to this and realizing that, wow, okay, I'm sitting in a box without any natural light coming in, because modern glass filters out UV and red and filters in the blue, unfortunately. So you're become even more toxic inside if you're sitting with the light coming in through the window. So there are solutions. You can pop out, like leaving the window a little bit open, because light has this property to it. It's like water, it floods in. So things like that, or protect your eyes with blue blocking glasses, and start seeing sunrise. I'm sorry if you have to wake up early to do that, but if it's a struggle to wake up early and see the sunrise, it's a big sign that your circadian rhythm is bad.
Hmm.
you know
Hmm.
if it's a struggle, then it has to be worked on, because when your hormones are off, it's like all hell will break loose. There's no free lunch there. You have to clue your body in on what time it is and start with the sunrise every day.
Yeah, to back that up, I mean, certification I was doing on hormones, the Dutch test certification, obviously this comes up a lot. And the way they put this, it really stood out to me. I was like, oh, I love that. They're like, it's about the contrast. You need a strong contrast. When it's dark, you want it dark. Like, look at nature. There is a lot of light contrast from pitch black
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
the brightness of full day, right? And that is what creates an ideal hormone cascade in our body because of these photoreceptors that we have. And we are existing in this mid-range, right? You turn
Yeah.
on your artificial lights, and then you
Yeah.
get in your car, you put your sunglasses on because you don't want it to be too bright. Then you drive into more artificial light where it's, controlled, not too bright, not too dark. And you come home and you do the same thing, and that's your whole life. And your body, like you said, your body just is confused. It's like, I'm not really exactly sure when am I supposed to produce melatonin? What's going on? Like, your
Yeah.
serotonin goes down, everything, all your hormone cascade
Everything. Yeah.
goes
Yeah.
downstream,
Yeah.
and it's
They
so important.
Yeah. They measured the luminescence. It's very important. What are you talking about? It's the luminescence. So when you're inside, it could be up to 1,000 times darker in a normal room. I'm not talking about night. Then
Mhm.
it's outside, depending on the weather. And when we're outside, so basically when we use artificial light at night, it's 1,000 times brighter than it's supposed to be in darkness, in pitch dark. So it's
Mhm.
a million times difference,
Mhm.
1,000 by 1,000 in luminescence. So we live in this
Yeah.
constant twilight, and that's
Yeah.
why people have problems with their dopamine as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. My friend Jenny Lynn Griffiths, who's been on the show, specializes in gut health. And in her course this is for gut health. This is for healing leaky gut health. Circadian rhythm is one of the big parts of it. And she talks to me about this all the time. Maybe you know the name of it. I can't remember the name of the app, but there's an app that you can use. I'll have to find it for you guys. But I'll just ask her. But you hold it up and it will tell you how many, lumens, or I'm not exactly sure what the measurement
Mm,
is. Hold it up to the sun. And that's part of her, assignment is hold this up to the lights
mhm,
in the room in your house, and now go outside and hold it up. And it's this Asher, and that's her way of getting them to see, like, holy crap, this is a huge difference, right?
mhm,
Which I think is
mhm.
a helpful tool and strategy. But
Yeah.
I share that, one, because that app is cool and I need to find the name of it, but two, like, this is a course on gut health, right? But she recognizes, because she is a functional practitioner, she recognizes that they need to get their circadian rhythm in line if they want their body to function optimally. So whether it's hormones, gut health, you
It's
name it,
everything. Everything where
it's
you look, it leads to light.
yeah,
Everything.
yeah.
So, talking about the gut, this hypothesis of expensive intestinal tissue, I think it's called expensive tissue, basically evolutionary theory that as we started progressing from primates and starting eating more DHA and meat and seafood, growing this larger brain, we had to trade something for it, because you can't just grow something without giving up something. So we gave up gut length, right? It just shrunk. Like if we compare ourselves to gorillas or chimps, their gut is much longer than ours, because they don't eat meat. They need to process that grass, that cellulose, that plant matter through a longer gut. So all that melanin that we had in the gut as primate kind of got concentrated on our is it called rectus abdominis, this kind of on top of that muscle. This is one of the areas in humans where we need sunlight, because we have POMC gene receptors there and melanin. So yeah, it's just one of the things that as I said, like everywhere you look, everything is based basically on electrons, photons, and protons. This is like the atomic world, and biochemistry is based on that.
Yeah.
The problem is that medical doctors don't learn biophysics, right? It's all about like molecular biochemistry, but not nobody's taught really about circadian rhythm, and that's
No.
a big problem because
Hmm.
this is the basis. It's so foundational.
Yeah. Oh man, I'll never forget like last 2 years ago, I guess I had to take my older two teenagers to a doctor, a regular Western medicine doctor for a physical because they had to have a physical to play sports or whatever. And we sat in this office that had no windows and just those, what are those lights called? I forget the name. The
Fluorescent.
fluorescent lights. So we're trapped. For some reason, they let us back, but then the doctor was busy for over an hour. So we sat in this room with no windows, with fluorescent lights. First of all, I
Getting
haven't been
sicker.
in a light environment for that long like that in a really long time. Right? I work from home. So I was just like, I could feel it. I was like, instantly, I'm very sensitive to
Yeah.
I notice those things. And it definitely, I was like, dude, I got to get out of here. Not to mention, they were telling me, my kids, what their BMI was and all this. I was like, get me out of here. Okay. Anyway, I'll come,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
quick question. Okay, you talked about kind of like how you have to fight for your freedom, right? So if I'm listening to this and I full on know that I'm in an environment like that, right? Like there's maybe not even windows and it's all fluorescent
Yeah.
lights, or maybe there's windows, but I just heard you say that it, filters out the reds. And what would you recommend for somebody who's in that boat?
So, first of all, I would recommend to build a plan to move out of that situation as soon as you can. Not everybody will do it, but not everybody will want to. So it's
Hmm.
not like, we're finishing office work. Not everybody will want to, right? And there will
Yeah,
be many people listening, maybe not in your audience actually, but many people are dopamine deficient because of this blue light problem. And they will not even, this information could not even register with them because um, when you lack dopamine, your critical thinking goes down, right? Not to offend anybody, but
yeah,
if this information is kind of doesn't make any sense, try just going out in the sun and maybe listening again. But of course, you can bring in some natural frequencies. We have technology to do that. It's not replacement for sun, but at least it's something. So if you bring
yeah,
in some red light and some UV light when UV light is present. And talking about apps, a good app to have for education, because we don't, like, you ask an average person, they don't know when red light comes in, when UVA comes in, when UVB comes in, and when they fade out, because
right.
light comes in layers. And there is an app for that. It's called Circadian app. You can install it and put on notifications and start educating yourself on, oh, okay, so UVA is here now. Okay, I should get out
Yeah,
and get some UVA on my skin and my eyes, UVB. But yeah, you can definitely just, pop out every hour for a couple of
right.
minutes and have that equipment in your office. And they don't have to be like expensive stuff like this UVA light. They're also called reptile lights. They're like 30 bucks on Amazon. And red light panels, it's better to get a better quality ones. But otherwise just any small one will do also, to like put between yourself and the screen, like shine it a little bit, not directly into your eyes, but bring it into your eyes a little bit. And
Yeah,
the skin is the solar panel for our brain. And
yeah,
that's one of the reasons why we don't have fur,
yeah,
because we have this large brain that consumes 20% of all the energy in the body. And where do we get the energy from? We get it from the sun, we get it from the food, and we get it through electrons that we take through earthing.
yeah. Yeah. And then, on top of that, really being proactive about your home environment, right? So those same kind of, there's all sorts of lights that you can get. Actually, I just moved last week, and one of the first things I went and got were some light bulbs that go to red light for my bedroom at night,
Mhm.
right? I got the changing ones so they can be kind of like a softer, right? They don't have to be full out like, vampire den. You can go that mode too if you want, but
Pretty
um
sexy.
yeah, it's pretty cool. But, it's when you start to do those things, if this kind of is outside of your normal realm, when you start to do those things, you start to notice a difference over time and how you feel. And that's really like biofeedback to me is underrated. Like but you have to notice it because a lot of these things are subtle, right?
Yeah.
And so try out, invest in
Yeah,
some salt lamps at least, or, some of those light bulbs that can go into the red hues, and just start with your bedroom. Just do that
yeah.
at night and start
Or
seeing,
even with candles. Yeah,
yeah, candles,
yeah,
and start seeing how you feel. And not
yeah.
to mention it's like beautiful. So there's that
Yeah, I
added
totally agree.
bonus.
And it reminds me also of, like very well how people, when they go from eating processed food to real food, as time goes by, they can't even touch processed food anymore because it
Right.
just makes them feel bad. The same happens with your light environment. When
Yep.
you start living by these principles, when you align your lifestyle with the sun, the same thing happens. I cannot stand to be in
Yep.
artificial light now. I
Yep.
just can't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's seriously bothering me right now, but it's cool because we're talking about, and I'm
It just
like, I'm gonna have to go get some of those sunlight, the light bulbs that they have that mimic sunlight a little better because we just moved in and these are not my vibe. So yeah, I love that. Right. It does become like that. You become more sensitive. You notice more versus if you're eating Doritos and soda all the time. You're not gonna notice versus you've been eating super nutrient dense and then you eat that, you will notice. That's such a great analogy. Okay, let's talk about melanin a little bit. I want to get deeper into this. What do people need to know about melanin?
So, as you know, we've talked about Arturo S. Herrera. He's a Mexican researcher, and in 2015, he, with a team, looked into like, why is it that ATP, this energy kind of currency that our mitochondria produce, um, basically an adult makes up to 180 kilograms of ATP every day, which is a huge amount. What is it, like 400 pounds or something like that?
Yeah.
But at any given time, we only have 50 grams of ATP in the body because it gets used up like that very quickly.
Mhm. Mm.
So according to their calculations, there had to be something else that provides energy in the body. And they found that it's melanin because, as I said, melanin dissociates the water. It takes H2O and converts it into it splits it into H, O, and two electrons. Mitochondria, these organelles that produce ATP and metabolic structured water, um, they actually use H, hydrogen, as a proton gradient that um, propels electrons through the mitochondrial electron transport chain, at the end of which there's oxygen. So hydrogen, oxygen, and the electron transport chain uses electrons, right? So all these three elements that mitochondria use is what melanin kind of, through this magical process, dissociates water into for our mitochondria to use. So it's very fascinating. And so people usually would think that melanin, oh, okay, that's like darker people, like on their skin that would have melanin. But everybody has, we have three types of melanin in our body. And we have melanin in our brain, we have melanin in our cochlea, we have melanin in our like adrenal glands, in the liver, in the gut. So it seems like it's there for a reason,
Yeah.
and to produce energy. And what destroys melanin is artificial blue light. How can you make more melanin? You have to be in UV light from the sun, paired with the red light from the sun, because the sun contains all the colors of the rainbow, plus the infrared that we cannot see and the UV light that we cannot see. It has all of that. So whenever we use gadgets, obviously it's not the same as the sun, because we're not gods, right? We cannot recreate that yet. Yeah. So melanin is this new area that people are looking into, and they're trying to synthesize it. And it's like 1 gram is like $2,000. It's crazy.
Oh
Um,
my goodness, of course.
yeah. But melanin, as well as dopamine, they start as phenylalanine and tyrosine, and these are aromatic amino acids, which means that they have aromatic rings. They're hexagonal rings. And what are they? They are photon traps. So they trap light energy from the sun. They're designed to, and they convert it into these different things. So we have these precursors like phenylalanine, tyrosine, tryptophan, and histidine in us, these aromatic amino acids that are photon traps, which is another way to say that we need the sun, right? We have every cytochrome inside the mitochondria is coded to receive a particular frequency of light. Why is that? Well, because we need the sun to produce energy, to produce this metabolic water that is deuterium depleted, and that stores that photonic energy in it. We are basically like liquid crystals, and we're connected to the sun every time we're in the sun, quantumly.
Yeah. It's kind of hearing you say that is making me think of how, when your kids want to eat junk food or something and your brain goes to, no, you need nutrients. Like you need macronutrients, you need micronutrients. It's like what you're describing are kind of like the different micronutrients of the sun, right? These different spectrums, and in combination are synergistic and work differently. Like we need
Very
all of
synergistic.
those. Right.
Yeah. And it's like red light is present in the sun from the moment it's above the horizon until it sets. So as we are designed to be in the sun all the time, mitochondria produce this metabolic water with the help of red light, only in this infrared light from the sun. And so when you are not in infrared light from the sun, then your mitochondria are not producing water. And could it be that, when we use red light therapy, and it's been shown such a great thing for many, health conditions, could it be it works because we're deficient in
Exactly.
infrared light,
I think so.
because if your mitochondria is not producing water, which
Right.
can store photons, your
Right.
battery charge is going down, and this is not a good thing. People more and more are looking into mitochondrial DNA over the nucleus DNA, because mitochondrial DNA is what actually controls our cells. It's not the nucleus DNA that most research is aimed at, unfortunately. So we have to look at those little bacteria, which mitochondria are, that for some magical reason got a symbiotic relationship within archaea cell millions of years ago, probably billions of years ago. And now we have them inside of us, and they produce energy for us.
Yeah. Once again, I'm going to bring this to practical experience for listeners in terms of talking about melanin and it being able to produce energy in your body. I I have come to the conclusion, I really think a huge reason that so many people are overeating, of course, it's multifactorial. Of course, we have, flavor optimized foods and blah, 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 blah. But I just think a huge part of that is our disconnection from the sun, because you can take a person who tends to overeat all the time and put them outside all day, put them on some camping trip where they're just out all day. I guarantee you they will eat way less that day because they're using the other source of food for our bodies that we're supposed to have, that is the sun. It is literally like food. That's what I try to tell my client. And I know you're really, really good with your clients on the sunlight stuff, but I try to put it that way. I'm like, it is literally like food. And if you don't get that energy from the sun, your body's going to start craving it from food. And we've all experienced that. Every single one of us. You're not outside, hiking and at the lake and, camping that night and like hiding behind the bushes, binge eating like crazy. You might have really worked up an appetite and do that, but it's different. And we've all experienced that. And the last question I have is like for, what I've always been taught is that if you do naturally have darker skin, that the darker your skin is, the higher your sunlight requirements are. Do you agree? Yeah.
Of course, yeah. You would, yeah, absolutely right. Because you will absorb less UV light.
Right.
And you will produce less vitamin D. Obviously, it's one of the biggest reasons, right? This is usually where I start talking about the sun with people, is about vitamin D, because people are more and more informed about
Right.
especially to what we've been through in the last 4 years, about the importance of maintaining high levels of vitamin D. And they think, most people actually think that it's the only way, like the only reason to be in the sun. And
Right.
15 minutes of sun a day is enough. No, it's not enough. We're designed to be under the sun all the time. And as you said, I think everybody has at least a childhood memory of being on the beach and not caring about eating at all. That's
Right.
because we produce ATP. ATPase spins just in the presence of infrared light.
Hmm.
That's why
Yeah.
we're supposed to eat less in the summer when the solar yield is more. We get more energy from the
Yeah.
sun, and in winter, it works like a seasonal eating. You would eat more protein and fat in the winter, especially in northern regions or like higher latitudes. Nature is just coupled like that.
Mhm.
It's the perfect design. We don't need to, we've been in the last like 20, 30 years, we've been become completely dogmatic and like this scientism, like the science shows, well, your science is
Right.
corrupt. Um, Anytime I look at a study, if it doesn't align with nature, then I know there's something wrong with that study. It's
Yeah,
so
I know.
simple to just compare it to what nature does.
100%. Somebody just brought to me yesterday, like something like I was talking about cassava, and they're like, I heard cassava's bad. And I'm like, okay. Well, I personally don't jive with all of this stuff on social media that people have been eating this forever and it literally grows in nature and it tastes good and all that. Like, I don't want to hear it's bad for everybody. Cool. If you have a particular issue with cassava, if you have some sort of particular, great, but I totally agree with you. It's the ego and arrogance of human beings to like try to remove us from nature, which honestly a lot of times does go down to greed. So many times it boils down to greed. It's either greed over money or fame, one or the two, but it's usually money, right? And so, I might go around trying to tell people that the sun is bad for them because I do have some sort of ulterior motive. Like as we started the episode out, open your eyes, look around, and I hope that this episode has given you guys some consideration for how you're going to do this. Because, like, okay, for example, I live in Hawaii right now, right? And so it's pretty idyllic that way. Even though I live in Hilo and we have a lot of rain and it is raining right now, we still have a lot of sun. We have like 70 something degrees year round here. So it is a much more, comfortable environment to be outside in. And people are just happier here, straight up. And I know some of that's from, the Hawaiian culture of aloha and all of that. But at the same time, like, I mean, it is not abnormal for me to be driving down in my neighborhood. At every car I pass, people are just smiling. When I walk into the grocery store, people give you a full-on huge smile. Like people are just generally happier here. It just seems like people are generally in a good mood here much more often than when I was living in Utah. Nothing wrong with the people in Utah. I'm just saying it is night and day in terms of this like super good, happy, hey, positive mood, and this kind of more, because it's like freezing cold like 8 months of the
Yeah.
year there. I mean, think of when you think of tropical cultures, like anywhere along the equator, think of those cultures and like super no offense to the cold countries, but you don't exactly think of the same kind of dynamic in terms of
Yeah.
mood, So yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the harsh truth is that you need to be in the sun wherever you live. You need to be in touch with the elements. And I know
Yep.
when you lived in Utah, you zipped around in the winter in shorts.
Yep.
That's the congruent lifestyle.
Yep. Yeah.
Because
Get
if
your,
it's
get your cold
cold,
therapy.
yeah, you produce
Canadians are like, girl,
you produce photons on the inside when you're in the cold. This is how nature made it okay for us to be in those latitudes. It all
Yeah.
works in it's all coupled, like the deuterium content that we haven't talked about, but it's also like it's higher in the sea and at the equator, but also solar yield that helps you deplete deuterium is higher at the equator. As you go north or south to the poles, towards the poles, deuterium in the water will be less concentrated, but also your solar yield is less concentrated. So wherever you live, unfortunately, you have to be in touch with the elements. And the harsh truth is, of course, if you live in a warm climate, it's much easier to lead that kind of lifestyle.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
just not sugarcoating, but it's true.
Right. Yeah, I once heard this doc. I think he was a vitamin D specialist, but obviously it was a lot of talk about sunlight and the interactions with our body. It's like on Tim Ferriss or something. This was like 6 years ago I heard this, but I'll never forget it because I think it was Tim Ferriss. He was like, it was somebody like that. And the interviewer was like, so what about people in, Northern Canada? And he goes, move.
Yeah, yeah.
And, obviously that's not always going to happen, but I would say like I do tell my clients that live in these very harsh cold climates, I'm like, you need to go on a tropical vacation. That is like a health need for you
Mhm.
at least once a winter, like stock up. But if it's financially feasible for you, like more, because it is, yeah, like granted, for sure, like do what you can to adapt and make it happen. And it would be ideal if you live in a very cold climate to take some vacations on out of pure health necessity to a warmer environment a couple of times a winter.
It just makes you think also, if not in winter, nothing around you grows, maybe you shouldn't, like, maybe we're not designed to
Right.
like live there, you know?
Yeah.
So another
Yeah.
harsh truth. Unfortunately, it's just nature doesn't care. Like it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
is, right? It's just
Yeah.
is. And we
Yeah.
choose what we do.
Mm. You have a course on light. Is
I
that
actually
so?
would like to offer a free 7-day string email course on detoxing blue light, and basically provides you
Nice.
education on how to block blue light and how to restore your photoreceptors. So they can
Beautiful.
sign up
Yeah.
the link in the description.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we'll link that up. And as you can tell, she's very like, I love the way that you coach, and the way that you teach because you're very to the point. Like, here is precisely what you need to know and do. Go. So we'll link that up. Daria, thank you so much. This has been such a
Thank
fun
you.
episode.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Inside Out Health Podcast. I hope this episode served as inspiration and something that you needed to hear in your life. If you have a friend or family member that you think would benefit from this episode, please share it with them. And also, please subscribe. I have so many more amazing guests coming. I have just been so gifted and honored to meet so many incredible health professionals in my career, and I cannot wait to share their messages with you guys. So please subscribe. And if you could be so kind as to rate my show, I would really appreciate it. This podcast is honestly an intuitive call to me to help spread goodness to the world. And so if you guys can help me do that, I would really appreciate it. If you want more info on this guest, pop over to my website, check out my podcast section, and you can get links to everything we talked about in the show, and find out more about this guest and where you can go from here. Make sure you're also following me on Instagram. That is my most active platform. You can find me at Coach Tara Garrison. You can also find me on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter. Everything is Coach Tara Garrison across the board. And then, yeah, if you want to send me a message, guys, and let me know other guests or other topics you want to hear on the show, please let me know. I am here to serve you. So would love to hear from you, would love your feedback on the show. And if you share any of these episodes, please tag me on social media. It's Coach Tara Garrison.